Lesson 55. The Living Church. A short summary of the history of the Church for almost 2,000 years of its existence. The following is a brief summary. The first 400 years. The apostles dispersed to different countries in order to carry out Christ's command to teach. The apostles baptized, preached, and ruled in various countries to which they were sent. They appointed bishops and priests to rule and minister to the faithful. In spite of sufferings and persecution, they persevered, until finally they sealed their faith by martyrdom. Peter and Paul were especially interested in the conversion of the Roman Empire, the mightiest and also most wicked empire of ancient days. The morals of the Romans were extremely debased. The evil was spreading from the imperial city of Rome throughout the vast empire. In Rome alone, some 30,000 different gods and goddesses were worshipped, many of them for their very immorality. So close was the union of the pagan religion and the empire that to attack the religion was to be considered a traitor to Rome. For this reason, the full force of the empire was set against the new religion of the Christians. But the fishermen did not falter. Peter battled with all his might. He and Paul were both martyred, but others rose to continue the battle for Christ, which lasted for nearly 300 years. Persecution followed upon persecution, numbering 10, unsurpassed in ferocity. The severest of those was under Nero and Diocletian. The latter condemned to death some 2 million Christians, but the more they were persecuted, the faster they increased. Tertullian says, "The blood of martyrs is the seed of Christianity." At last, in 313 AD, the banners of Christianity were flung out in victory. Peace was granted by the Edict of Milan. Later, Constantine the Great made Christianity the state religion. He was led to this step when he conquered in battle after seeing in the heavens a luminous cross with the words "In hoc signo vinces," "In this sign thou shalt conquer." His saintly mother, Saint Helena, had also a great influence on his conversion. The second 400 years. Before 60 years had passed after the Edict of Milan, hordes of barbarian Huns, Goths, Vandals, and Visigoths, numbering millions, started moving from the north into the civilized European countries. City after city surrendered until Rome itself was taken, and the darkness of barbarism covered the continent. But the missionaries and teachers of the church mingled with the barbarians, returned with them to their countries, and brought light once more out of darkness. St. Patrick was sent to Ireland and converted that nation to Christianity. St. Augustine in England and St. Boniface in Germany changed those nations into followers of the cross of Christ. The idol-worshipping Franks followed their king Clovis into the Christian fold. At the end of 4 centuries, the cruel and savage barbarians of Italy, Spain, France, Germany, England, and Ireland were Christians, civilized, progressive, settled in peaceful cities, building churches, carrying on trade. The third 400 years. In the 7th century, Muhammad had begun to propagate his doctrines among the Arabian tribes. His was a conversion by the sword. A great part of Asia, North Africa, Spain, and the islands of the Mediterranean were overrun and conquered by Muhammad's Allah. At last, Mohammedanism broke into France. In a memorable 9-day battle in 732 AD, the French Christians under Charles Martel defeated the Mohammedans at Tours and thus stopped their incursions into France. But in the next century the Mohammedans entered the sacked Rome itself, even St. Peter's. However, the church carried on and finally repelled the invader. The fall of Jerusalem into the hands of the Mohammedans in the 11th century gave impetus to the Crusades, during which Christian armies went to free the holy places from the infidels. There were 7 crusades in all, from 1095 AD to 1254 AD. Among the outstanding leaders we may mention Godfrey de Bouillon, Frederick Barbarossa, Richard the Lion-Hearted, and St. Louis of France. The fourth 400 years. The Christian rulers of Europe, upon becoming more powerful, began to look with envy on the Pope's authority and to encroach upon it. Although the Crusades had had good effects, too much interest in material preparations caused a relaxation in spiritual life. Heresy often attacked the Church. Berengarius denied the real presence, followed the Greek schism, the Albigensian heresy, and the heresies of Wycliffe and Huss, who denied the authority of the Church. Finally, in the 16th century, the general laxness and spirit of revolt culminated in open defiance against Church authority, and the Protestant revolt swept Europe. At the time, the Church was, no doubt, in great need of reform. This largely explains the success of the would-be reformers, whose revolt broke up the unity of Christendom. The first and most powerful was the German Augustinian monk Martin Luther, who in 1517 made an open attack on the doctrine of indulgences. He soon broke with the church authorities, declaring that there was no authority but Scripture, Scripture interpreted as he understood it. He gained many followers. Some were sincerely seeking a more evangelical religion, others were attracted to the new freedom proclaimed by Luther. German nationalism welcomed emancipation from Rome, while many princes sided with the new religion for political motives. Revolt spread from Germany to other countries. In Switzerland, John Calvin followed in Luther's footsteps and began Calvinism. In Scotland, John Knox was the propagator of Protestantism. In England, Henry VIII's desire to change wives was the immediate cause for the establishment of the Anglican Church. Denmark, Holland, Norway and Sweden were all swept into heresy by their rulers. But out of the pains of a Protestant revolt, the Church came forth stronger and purified. In the meantime, newly discovered countries were converted. The Portuguese and Spaniards were the pioneers of this missionary enterprise. The discoveries of new lands to which Catholic missionaries went resulted in the gain of more millions for the Church than had been lost in Protestantism. The last 400 years. Many in Europe returned to the Church. More were gained in the Americas. Protestantism has continued to attack the Church. The paganism bred from the spirit of laxity and revolt is another enemy. Open warfare goes on in Russia and satellite countries. Still the Church continues to grow, the greatest single religious body in history. Missionaries of Mother Church can be found in the most remote portions of the globe, working patiently to bring souls to Christ.